I never expected to be chosen by a millionaire CEO, but what I did next left everyone in tears. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My world, once steady, tumbled like a house of cards. It started with a simple email. My heart raced as I opened it, the glow of the screen illuminating my trembling hands. The subject line screamed opportunity. A billionaire named James, a name whispered in luxury circles, wanted me for his charity gala. My breath caught. Me. Chosen. I could hardly fathom it. The air felt electric, thick with excitement and dread. I glanced around my cramped apartment, cluttered with remnants of a life too frugal to sustain dreams. My shirt was wrinkled, and my shoes had seen better days. This wasn't my world. I'd always thought of James as a mythical figure, hovering above my reality like a mirage. The parties he threw, the ribbons he cut, it was all too far for someone like me. But the invitation felt tangible, almost real. I could hear my heart thundering in my chest, each beat echoing my hopes and fears. What did he see in me? My best friend, Bella, clapped her hands when I told her. Her excited whoops bounced off the walls. She believed in me when no one else did. You have to go, she insisted, her eyes shimmering with enthusiasm. This could change everything. But deep down, I felt the weight of doubt. What if I stumbled? What if I embarrassed myself? The day arrived, and I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down the fabric of my dress. It was too tight. My stomach churned. The glittering gala was to be held in a mansion that seemed to float above the city, cloaked in mystery. My hands were clammy as I stepped into the luxurious hall. Crystal chandeliers hung like stars, illuminating the crowds of exquisitely dressed figures swirling around me. I felt like an imposter, lost in a dream that would shatter any moment. Laughter floated through the air, sharp with a mix of joy and pretense. Each glance from the elegantly attired guests made my heart race with panic. I was just a nobody among somebodies. Suddenly, amidst the chatter, I spotted him. James. He stood tall, gaze magnetic, commanding the attention of the room. My breath hitched. I was drawn to him like a moth to a flame. His presence was overwhelming. The noise faded, and all I could see was him. What did he want with me? As the night wore on, whispers gnawed at me. Who is she? Does she belong here? Each question pierced deeper than the last, swelling my anxiety. A knot tightened in my throat. I was trapped, while the vibrant crowd danced on. But when James approached me, everything changed. The air crackled as he offered his hand. I wasn't sure whether to accept or run. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice low and enigmatic, as if unraveling secrets hidden beneath layers of silk. I hesitated. His deep, serious gaze pinned me in place. You're different. The weight of his compliment settled on my shoulders, yet uncertainty lingered, making my heart race. What did he really see in me? Suddenly, a commotion erupted. A loud crash reverberated through the hall, echoing chaos. Glass shattered, screams filled the air, and all eyes turned toward the commotion. Time slowed. I felt my pulse quicken, a tightness gripping my chest. My hands shook violently, and I could hardly breathe. In the chaos, my world shrank to just one thought: why was James looking at me like that? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The crash echoed through the opulent hall, the fine crystal shards glittering like tiny stars against the polished floor. Panic surged, and the laughter that had once filled the room turned into an unsteady hum of confusion. I could feel the heat radiating from James as he stepped closer, his presence grounding, yet unsettling. What just happened? I stuttered, my voice barely loud enough to pierce the drenching silence. James kept his gaze fixed on me, as if drawing strength from my presence amidst the chaos. Stay close, he urged, wrapping a protective arm around my shoulders. His touch was firm yet gentle, and the anxiety that had seized my heart began to uncoil slightly. In a world of polished perfection, it was mesmerizing to feel like someone cared just enough to shield me. The room was filled with frantic guests, some rushing towards the exits while others huddled together, whispering in fearful tones. I had gone from feeling like a misplaced ornament to a focal point in the center of a storm, yet James' grip provided an unexpected flicker of warmth. "Is everyone okay?" A voice burst into the air, and I turned to see Bella, her face pulled tight with worry. She had somehow found her way into the mansion, and the sight of her brought a swell of comfort. "Just chaos," James replied, never breaking eye contact with me. "But it looks like no one is hurt, thank God." The commotion began to settle, but uncertainty draped over the crowd like a heavy blanket. Whispers clawed their way back to life, the tension palpable. My stomach twisted with insecurity as I caught fragments of conversations. "Who invited her? What does she think she's doing here?" A part of me wanted to curl up and disappear, but another part, one that had barely dared to breathe in the lofty atmosphere of the gala, began to stir. What if this was my moment to defy gravity? My heart thudded at the thought of pushing back against the tide of judgment that threatened to pull me under. "Don't listen to them." James leaned closer, his voice a soft anchor amidst the swirling noise. "You're here for a reason." His assurance gave way to a glimmer of hope, pushing aside the gnawing self-doubt. I would not crumble under the weight of their gazes, I would stand tall. "Thank you," I murmured, meeting his deep blue eyes. There was something stirring in his look, a kind of recognition that made my pulse quicken. Just then, a woman brushed by us, her elaborate gown sweeping against the floor. She stopped short, her eyes narrowing at the sight of me. "James, darling, what are you doing with her?" Her voice dripped with contempt, and I felt the air thicken again. Before James could respond, I found my voice. "I'm only here to support the cause," I said, the words spilling out before I second-guessed them. The audacity of it felt foreign, yet liberating, ushering in a sense of rebellion I never knew I had. "Cute," she retorted dismissively. Support from a nobody, the word stung like a slap across my face, but rather than shrink back, an unfamiliar fire ignited within me. "Maybe you should assess what makes a somebody," I threw back, the thrill of defiance buzzing in my veins. I expected James to smooth over the tension, but instead, he smirked slightly, his lips curving in amusement. "Well played," he murmured, igniting warmth in my chest. "You must have some fight in you after all that." And that instant, I realized I was no longer the timid girl I had stepped into this mansion as. Those sharp stares no longer pierced, they collided harmlessly against walls of newfound courage. As the buzz of voices continued to swirl around us, I turned back to focus on James. Then the moment shifted sharply. Someone shouted from the far corner, drawing our attention. A commotion erupted, words rushed forward, a wave of alarm that washed over the crowd. "Someone's been hurt." My heart sank. The vibrations of the hall found their echo in my chest. A different chaos unfurled as guests darted toward the entrance. I felt James' grip tighten around me, but it was no longer just a gesture of protection. There was urgency in his hold. "That we need to go," he said, guiding me through the throng of panic. My mind raced as we stumbled toward the doorway. What awaited us outside? What had truly unraveled in this luxurious shroud? As we stepped into the fresh night air, the moon hung low, disquieting darkness casting shadows across the gravel drive. Bella had followed us outside, her face a blend of concern and curiosity. She grasped my hand tightly, her eyes wide with worry. What happened? But as I glanced back at James, my breath caught. He had gone pale, something shifting across his features as the echoes of panic faded into dusk. Glancing back at me, his gaze held a world of unspoken fears. "James?" I whispered, detecting something unsettling in the depths of his expression. But before I could speak again, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He fumbled to answer it, his expression turning rigid with tension as he took a few steps away to speak. As I stood there, the weight of uncertainty thickening the air, I realized I had fallen into a rabbit hole far deeper than the facade of a gala. My heart raced as I caught snippets of his conversation, the words wrapping around me like chains. "It's worse than we thought, it'll be there." Each word felt like a ticking clock, counting down to something monumental. Just as he turned back to face me, a shadow swept over the entrance, and I knew that this night had just begun to unravel. The air thrummed with unease as James turned back to me, the gravity of his voice still hanging in the twilight air. I could see it in his eyes, the tension, the urgency. It was as if, beneath the bright lights of the party, something deeper had been stirred, something that had been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. "James, what's going on?" I demanded, stepping closer, the sudden chill of the night beckoning me to uncover the truth. I wanted to shake the uncertainty from him, to pull back the layers of worry that had woven their way across his features. That he didn't answer right away, running a hand through his hair as if trying to clear away the storm clouds brewing in his mind. "I need to handle something," he finally said, his words clipped, and I felt a pang of fear shoot through me. There may be suddenly, a woman rushed out of the crowd, her face awash with panic. She grasped at James' arm, her breath coming in sharp bursts, and I could feel my heart constricting with every frantic word she uttered. "There's been an accident, someone's been hurt really badly, and they need your help, James. It's serious." The air was thick with dread, and my mind raced as I watched the desperation in her eyes. What kind of accident could send shockwaves through a room so seemingly perfect? James nodded, his face having transformed from apprehension to determined resolve. "Okay, I'm on my way," he replied, urgency sparking in his voice. As he turned toward me, I grasped his arm. "Wait. You can't just leave. I don't understand what's happening. What if it's someone we know?" My heart thudded in my chest, unwilling to release the fear that had set in. "I have to do this," he said, his voice softening. There was a tide of pain swirling just beneath the surface of his steady demeanor. "Please, trust me." But trust only went so far, and uncertainty gnawed at my insides. He was slipping away into the dark, and the shadows were beginning to swallow him whole. "James, please." I cried out, but the light in his eyes dulled for a brief moment, replaced by something painful, an unspoken weight of responsibility I was not yet privy to. He stepped back, his grip still on my arm reluctantly loosening. "It'll come back to you, I promise. Just don't go anywhere." The gravity of that promise cracked through the fear, hinting at something far deeper. I nodded listlessly, feeling a knot form in my throat as he turned, dread spilling into every inch of my being as he disappeared into the darkened alley, driven to help someone in distress. "Stay here," Bella urged, her grip tightening around my wrist. But who was I without James? I barely knew myself outside his proximity, his steadfast aura rooting me in a world I was just beginning to find my place in. As the moments stretched on, I felt anchored to the spot, a statue caught in the push and pull of uncertainty. I could hear the hushed whispers of the guests filtering outside, the chaos they were desperately trying to shake off morphing into something much graver. Their wary glances and murmurs only served to deepen the pit in my stomach. A flicker of light caught my eye as several emergency vehicles roared up to the entrance, their red and blue lights mixing with the stars overhead, a cruel cosmic irony. The confrontation had shifted from mere social ridicule to a life-or-death scenario. I could no longer view this gathering as a simple gala, it was a chamber of secrets, each person holding shadows I was desperate to understand. "Maybe we should go inside," Bella suggested, but her voice wavered. We both knew that we were searching for solace that could scarcely be found among the swirling crowds. "I can't stand here. I need to know what's happening," I said, my resolve hardening like steel. As we moved toward the entrance, the cold intensified around us, mirroring the slow, creeping dread coiling in my gut. A murmur rippled through the assembly, a name whispered repeatedly, "Lucas." My stomach churned at the sound, and I turned to Bella, her face pale as the name sank like a stone within our shared concern. "I think that's James." "Brother," she breathed, and a new wave of panic washed over me. "What if Hesse don't want to think about that?" I interrupted, the gravity of the moment suffocating. I had never considered the depths of James' life, nor the obstacles that could shatter our still fledgling connection in an instant. Chaos erupted around us once more as people flooded toward the rear of the mansion, a mother's sobs piercing through the veil of noise. "No, please, no." The words tore at my heart, a raw edge sharpening the panic building within. "James." I yelled, the name hanging in the air like a prayer. But even as I searched through the throng, every face blurred together into a tableau of despair, and I felt small, helpless against the tide of fate. Then, through the chaos, a familiar silhouette emerged, drenched in shadows yet undeniably resolute. My breath stilled as James came barreling toward us, but the look on his face was not one of triumph or relief, it was a harbinger of sorrow. His clothes were hastily strewn, a sign of his frantic dash, and the dread deepened. "What happened?" I implored, my voice shaking as I sought him out amidst the clamor. But before he could respond, a distant scream echoed through the questions, crushing dreams beneath its weight. Before I could process it, he was in front of me, his presence looming yet vulnerable. And when he spoke, the world grew silent. "We were too late," he whispered, breaking my heart beneath the weight of the revelation that a new horizon of uncertainty opened before me, throwing the fragile light of hope into a sharp, suffocating shadow. My heart raced as the looming dread wrapped around me once more. In a world already brimming with chaos, I understood with clarity that everything had changed. As the somber words settled over us like a thick fog, I felt the ground sway beneath my feet. The earlier sheen of the gala vanished entirely, dissolving in its wake. I searched James' eyes, wading through the sorrow that pooled there, wishing to drown the pain with my own disbelief. "No," I breathed, as if the word alone could unravel the horror he had just unleashed. The chaos around us morphed into a living entity, whispering cruelly to my queen of denial. "James, what are you saying? Who was it?" My voice cracked, barely a whisper against the thrumming sorrow that held everything at a standstill. "Lucas," he replied, the name falling from his lips like a broken promise. The tremor that laced his voice was barely contained, threatening to spill over into everything else. He pulled me closer, his arms encircling me, but I could feel the distance that had formed between us, an expanse of grief that words could never cross. That I in that moment, the party felt unmoored from reality, a distant planet where bright smiles existed only for show, while real life turned tragic behind polished walls. I could still hear the echoed cries of a mother filtering through the thick air, piercing through the laughter and clinking glasses, the sounds of a life interrupted, and my heart cracked slightly as I realized James had been a part of that tragedy. Did you see it happen?" I stammered, my chest tightening with the weight of fear. Was he alone?" The questions tumbled, an endless stream of turmoil seeking any glimmer of rationale that eluded my grasp. James turned his face away, his jaw set as he wrestled with words that felt too heavy to bear. "I wasn't there," but he hesitated, the hesitation gnawing at my sanity. "He was at the park, trying to help someone, and the car it just came out of nowhere." A beat of silence stretched between us, haunted by the echoes of mourning that could no longer be silenced. The truth twisted my heart, squeezing the tears I had been holding back until they began to brim my eyes, spilling over the edges and down my cheeks. How could this happen? A million ifs flooded my thoughts, each one threatening to loop back to the unbearable reality of loss. Bella stood at the edge of our cocoon of sorrow, her presence a steady anchor. "I'm so sorry, James," she murmured, her voice composed yet quaking underneath the weight of empathy. The chaos continued to swirl around us, yet in this moment, it felt muted, a distant storm casting shadows on our raw grief. "That I should have been there," James replied, his voice a mere whisper, filled with remorse I could barely comprehend. "I could have stopped it. I should have seen it coming." "James, you can't blame yourself for something that was out of your control," I interrupted, desperate to soothe the insurmountable pain that clung to him. Each word felt like a desperate lunge to break through the trembling walls he had constructed, but I felt only the weight of the barriers closing in on us once again. That we stood there, huddled together amidst the swirling currents of life-altering grief, and I felt lost. In some way, a part of me wanted to protect him from the immeasurable pain of his brother's loss while another part of me recoiled from the reality that I had no idea how. "I can't believe he's gone," James murmured, lost somewhere in the cavern of his thoughts. It was a profound declaration that seemed to echo everywhere in my mind, cutting through the noise of the still captivating evening. What do we do now? I found myself asking, uncertain and afraid. The future unfolded before us, blank with clouds of doubt, threatening to engulf any idea of normalcy we could ever hope to cling to. His grip around me tightened momentarily as if seeking reassurance from my presence. "I want to take care of everything. I need to make arrangements, speak to the family, be there for them." In those words, a small ember of hope ignited in my chest. "You're not alone, James. I'll be with you every step of the way," I promised, even as I struggled to understand what this journey would entail. We had crossed a bridge to a world where darkness took center stage, and each moment ahead felt uncertain and shadowed by the burdens we both carried. Suddenly, amidst the heartache, a flicker of warmth brushed against me. A stranger gently placed a hand on my shoulder, offering a tissue with a soft smile. "I can't imagine what you're going through," she said, her voice steady and kind. "You're stronger than you know." I grasped the tissue, grateful for the small connection amidst the chaos, heartened by the kindness that still flickered in the hearts of others. But as I turned back to James, that ember of hope threatened to extinguish once more as something glinted in his eyes, a depth of despair mingling with determination. "I need to go to the hospital. They need to be notified. I want to be there whenever they find out." Before I could respond, his gaze shifted towards the ongoing storm, his expression cast under the shadows of something unspeakable and heavy amidst the chaos. A feeling of foreboding washed over me, as the cliff of uncertainty loomed overhead. "James, please," I urged, rising urgency creeping in. I didn't want to let him go into the darkness alone, but as he met my gaze, the weight of something unuttered echoed between us. The path ahead was fraught, and another choice waited beyond the horizon, one that could alter the very essence of what we had just begun to build together. "I'll find you," he murmured, a promise that felt like it was carved into the very fabric of the night. Then he slipped away, and I stood frozen, the tears cascading down my cheeks as the shadows shifted once more. The world felt impossibly broken, and as I clung onto the thread of hope he had ignited within me, I realized we were both on the precipice of something far more than either of us could fathom. And as I took a moment to breathe, the weight of the truth stared back at me, grasping at the still unknown complexities of James' life and the revelations that lay hidden beneath the surface. One worse than the darkness that had already arrived. As the sounds of laughter and celebration continued to drift from the gala, I felt an unrelenting ache in my chest. The soft glow of the chandeliers felt foreign now, casting a cruel light on the shadows clinging to my heart. I struggled to breathe as I waded through the sea of elegantly dressed strangers, their smiles and small talk a bitter reminder of a life I felt had been ripped away. That I was standing alone amongst the social whirlwind, the world around me spinning in a dizzying swirl of color and spectacle. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the crowd. It was Bella. Her face was a cascade of empathy and understanding, reflecting the whirlwind of emotions circling around us like a dark cloud. "I can't believe he just left like that," she said softly, her voice breaking the spell of my thoughts. "It's heavy, isn't it?" I wiped the remnants of tears that slipped uncontrollably down my cheeks and nodded. "I didn't think something like this could happen." My voice faltered as I struggled to articulate the grief weighing me down. "How does anyone move forward from this?" Bella stepped closer, lowering her voice as if we were sharing a secret with the night itself. "You don't move on. You move with it. You carry it and find a way to balance it." Her words were filled with the kind of wisdom that comes only from experience. "But you don't have to do it alone, okay?" I swallowed hard, grateful for her presence yet feeling the enormity of the burden now shared between us. "A weight we were both unprepared to carry. That I feel so helpless," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "James feels so broken, and I don't know how to reach him." "Just be there for him, however he needs you," she encouraged, taking my hands in hers. "Sometimes that's all we need to not be alone in our grief." As I contemplated her words, a ripple of nostalgia tugged at my heart, reminding me of moments shared in laughter and love, where grief never even dared to enter. When had life become so tragically complicated? My thoughts were interrupted by a shout from the hallway outside, drawing my attention. A couple had cornered a waiter, demanding to know why there was chaos looming behind the scenes. I shifted my gaze, recognizing the panic that bled into their voices. Their alarm felt almost fitting. The world felt unbearably chaotic, as if it were reflecting the turmoil inside my own heart. While I turned to glance at the commotion, a familiar face appeared among the crowd, one I hadn't anticipated. Emily, James' childhood friend, was rushing towards me with urgency etched in her features. "I heard what happened," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I needed to find you. We need to talk." Before I could respond, she grabbed my arm and pulled me aside, away from the prying eyes. "I'm so grateful you're with him. He needs you right now more than anyone," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "But there's something you need to know, something about Lucas. Things aren't as simple as they seem." The words twisted in my stomach, a hint of dread creeping in as her gaze flicked nervously around the room. "What do you mean? What aren't we being told?" "I can't say too much here," but she glanced around, then leaned in closer. "There are whispers, Alice. Whispers of Lucas being involved in something dangerous. And I don't think James knows the whole story yet." A jolt of confusion shot through me. "What are you saying? Lucas, was he in trouble?" Emily's expression hardened, and her voice softened, shaking slightly. "I can't be certain, but I've heard things, rumors. This wasn't an accident in the way we think. James deserves to know the truth, but I worry how it will affect him now." While I processed her words, a whirlwind of emotions raged inside me. The weight of grief was no longer just about mourning. It was tangled in shadows of secrecy, wrapped around the essence of Lucas' final moments, and perhaps it threatened to unravel everything I had hoped to share with James. "Please, promise me you won't say anything to him right now," Emily added, her eyes pleading. "We need to look into this more before he has to face it." I nodded, the bitter taste of uncertainty settling on my tongue. The looming threat of what lay beneath the surface felt like a damning storm, a sense of inevitability that something would break. As Emily retreated, I turned back toward the laughter of the gala, but I felt as though I were wading through murky water. The kindness of strangers left me better, but the burden of unknown truths was a new darkness looming before me. The night carried on, though time felt suspended. I remained a sentinel, a watcher at the precipice, caught between the urge to shield James from heartache and the unsettling reality that the truth could offer more pain than comfort. Each tick of the clock prompted thoughts of what I might unleash should I decide to confront the secrets harbored within the shadows. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, James' name lighting up the screen. My heart raced as I accepted the call, his voice seeping through, laden with vulnerability. "Alice? Can you come to the hospital? I need you." In that moment, my mind spiraled at the gravity of his request. I was about to cross a threshold, one that could alter everything. But as I rushed to respond, another message arrived from an unknown number, chilling me to the bone. "You don't know the whole story, Alice. Watch your back." The world tilted beneath my feet, shadows deepening as uncertainty enshrouded me. I had no idea what was coming next, but the storm was here, and its center was about to hit. The hospital's fluorescent lights were unforgiving as I entered, they cast a sterile glare on the worn linoleum floors. I was caught in the crosswind of hope and dread, each step further muddling my resolve. The air was thick with uncertainty, the hum of calm machines punctuating the grim silence. It was a world apart from the glittering chaos of the gala, and yet those sordid whispers clung to my thoughts. That I found James seated in a waiting area, his face pallid and drawn. The sight extinguished any flicker of warmth inside me, leaving nothing but concern in its place. He looked up as I approached, those blue eyes of his searching, vulnerable, full of unfathomable pain. "Alice," he breathed, seeming to muster the last remnants of his strength. The moment our gazes locked, the fabric of my heart unraveled a little more. "Hey," I replied softly, kneeling beside him. "I'm here." "What happened, Lucas?" James faltered, gripping the armrest as if it were a lifeline. "They said he's in a coma. The doctors didn't say much." "It's bad," Alice, that I swallowed the lump in my throat while my mind raced through a torrent of emotions. I wanted to soothe him, to ease the weight that had settled thickly over his shoulders. "I'm so sorry, James," I murmured, squeezing his hand. "I'm here, whatever you need," that he nodded, but the hollowness in his stare was an all-consuming void. I didn't know. I thought he was just going through a rough patch. I never imagined his voice cracked, the reality clawing at the edges of his composure. "It's not your fault," I whispered, wishing desperately to mend the fractures around us. "You love him. That's all you can do," but fighting back my own emotions was a futile attempt. Unanswered questions swirled around us, and the weight of Emily's revelation pressed heavily on my heart. Did James deserve to carry the burden of Lucas' secrets while teetering on the precipice of grief? "I should have seen the signs," he continued, his voice thick with regret. "He was different. I thought I could help him. Now, James," I interrupted gently. "We can't predict everything. Just be with him now. When he wakes up, you can ask him." He nodded, but a gnawing doubt lingered in his expression. In that moment, I wished more than anything that the hospital walls could shield us from the reality lurking in the darkness outside, the relentless shadows filled with secrets and hidden motives. Suddenly, a nurse approached, her expression professional but warm. "Mr. Parker. You can see Lucas for a few minutes. Just one at a time, please." James' panic intensified as he rose, and I felt the silent tremor of his fear echoing my own. Guided by anguish, we made our way down to the ICU. The sterile scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint hint of desperation filled the air, and as we approached the room, I felt a chill run down my spine. James hesitated outside the door, and I placed a reassuring hand on his back. "You're not alone," I reminded him, hoping my words could tether him to the moment. "Face this together, okay," he whispered, his voice a fragile thread. With a deep breath, he entered the room, and I followed close behind. Lucas lay there, wires and machines surrounding him like a cocoon, holding him captive in a world between life and death. Tubes snaked across his chest, and the rhythm of life echoed through machines that felt as sterile as the space around us. I felt my heart stutter in recognition. He was a ghost of the vibrant friend I remembered. James bowed his head, placing a trembling hand over Lucas' still one. "Looks like you really messed up this time, huh?" He choked out a bitter laugh, and tears slipped down his cheeks. "You're supposed to be the strong one. Why did you do this?" I stepped a little closer, wanting to weave a comforting presence around James even in the darkness. I felt small, powerless against the weight of this moment, but I couldn't look away from the raw display of emotion unfolding before me. Suddenly, an echoing beep drew our attention to the heart monitor, a swift spike unsettling the serene chaos of the room. I leaned forward anxiously, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. "James, is he?" But before I could finish, the door swung open again. It was Emily, looking paler and more frantic than I had ever seen her. "Alice." "James," she called, moving swiftly towards us. She took in Lucas' still body and paled further. "What is it?" I asked, panic rising in my throat as I braced myself for what was to come. "There's been a development. Someone's been looking for you," she panted, her urgency palpable. "The message you received, it's not just a warning. It's an ultimatum." A heavy pause lay between us, electric with the unspoken implications. "What do you mean?" James' voice quivered as he turned towards her, raw need flashing in his eyes. "They knew about Lucas, James. Whoever sent that message knows more than we don't." "They're not done," she said, her voice trembling like a feather caught in a storm. "We need to leave now." My breath hitched as the enormity of her words sank in. I looked back to James, who was grappling with the consequences of our reality. The storm was brewing, and we were in its eye, balanced on the edge of a knife. What awaited us beyond these hospital walls? Would it pull us further into the darkness? For the first time, a small, quiet voice whispered in my heart, perhaps the truth wouldn't just unravel our grief. It would mend the fragile fray of our lives or completely shatter everything we had ever known. And right then, I understood that we were all bound for a collision course with fate. The hum of uncertainty clung to us like the sterile scent of antiseptic. The atmosphere hung thick, each breath weighted with the gravity of Emily's revelation. As James processed the implications, his brow furrowed deeper, the lines of anguish carving deeper into his features. "What do you mean they know?" he asked, his voice a cracked whisper, fighting against the tempest building inside him. I felt my heart race, the anxiety crawling up my spine like a shadow chasing the light. "They're threatening you, James. There's more involved here than just Lucas. Just trust me, we need to go." "There's no time," Emily urged, her urgency cutting through my rising panic that I steadied myself, searching for a strand of hope tethered amidst the chaos. "We can't just leave Lucas," I murmured, feeling torn between loyalty to James and the stark reality of our predicament. "Lucas would want us to be safe," James declared, his voice quaking with turmoil. "He wouldn't forgive me if something happened to you too because of him." The sound of the heart monitor continued to beep steadily, a haunting reminder of the fragile boundary between existence and the unknown. I glanced at Lucas, lying motionless, his face pale against the stark white sheets. I wished for a moment that I could bridge the silence, bring him back to life not just for myself but for James, who needed him more than ever. "James," I reached for his arm, my touch meant to anchor him. "Do you really think it's safe for us to stay here? We need to make a plan. We can come back for him. I promise." But the weight of the world was visible in his eyes, a tempest swirling dangerously close to the surface. "I can't," he insisted, his voice breaking as his anguish poured out. "He needs me, Alice. I can't just leave him." In that moment, I realized that no words could quell the storm surging within him. I felt a crippling helplessness gnaw at my resolve. Emily glanced towards the door, a sense of urgency weighing heavily on her expression. "They'll come for you, James. We need to find shelter. Stay safe while we figure this out. Please." He hung his head, the fight visibly draining from him. The emotional conflict carved sharper lines across his weary features. What if they hurt him? What if this is my fault? What if his voice trailed off, and I could hear the unspoken regrets embedded within his words. "James, look at me," I said, forcing his gaze up to meet mine. "This isn't your fault. Well, fight to protect him, to get him the help he needs. But if we stay here, they'll exploit our weakness." The ceiling above felt like a confining prison. In a desperate effort to ignite a glimmer of hope, I said, "What if we can figure out who sent the message? What if knowing more can help Lucas?" He closed his eyes, wrestling with the echoes of his thoughts. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to face this. I don't even know what we're up against." A determined conviction nestled in my heart, ignited by the flicker of his vulnerability. "But we're not alone," I reminded him. "We've got each other, and we'll face it together. Remember what Lucas would want at last." He nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his gaze. With renewed resolve, Emily checked the corridor again before motioning toward the door. "We need to move. I'll drive, it's safer on the road." James turned back to Lucas, leaning close to murmur softly, "I'll find you, Lucas. I swear. I'll fix this." The vulnerability mixed with the quiet strength in his voice stirred something in me, a flicker of the hope I didn't realize I still possessed. As we stepped out of the sterile confines of the hospital, the chaos of the world beyond swirled around us like a tempest, but James was now no longer only shrouded in despair. The spark of determination ignited in the pit of his stomach, and I felt it breathe life back into our frayed resolve. Just as we reached the car, the weight of the past collided with the immediacy of our reality. My phone buzzed insistently against my thigh. I dug it out, only to find a message from an unknown number, the darkness of uncertainty creeping back into the edges of my thoughts. "You're getting in way over your heads. There's no way out. You're playing with fire." My heart raced wildly as I exchanged a look with Emily and James, their faces a mirror of rising dread. "What does that mean?" James demanded, his voice thick with apprehension. Don't know," I stammered, the words catching in my throat. The fear was tangible, wrapping its icy fingers around my heart. But as I stared into James's eyes, I saw a flicker of defiance brewing against the dark tide. "We have to keep going," I asserted, though the resolution in my own voice had started to falter. He nodded, determination glimmering behind the fear. We piled into the car, hearts heavy with the unrelenting load of secrets and uncertainty ahead of us. Outside, the world blurred as the road stretched endlessly, revealing no semblance of the comfort we once knew, what awaited us in the shadows. With every twist and turn, we were left wondering just how deep this rabbit hole would go before we could confront the truth. The car sped along the highway, headlights slicing through the gathering dusk like narrow beams of hope in a creeping darkness. I watched as the trees outside blurred into a darkened canvas, their silhouettes twisting into shapes that mirrored the uncertainty churning within me. James gripped the dashboard, his knuckles white as apprehension overtook him. Emily focused intently on the road ahead, our silent driver against the storm defending against us. "Where are we even going?" James finally broke the silence, his voice strained with the desperation for a plan, a tangible destination in this sea of uncertainty. "Well, find a safe place to regroup." "I know a small town not far from here," Emily replied, her voice steady yet laced with concern. "They have a little motel that should be off the radar." I glanced at James. He appeared miles away, lost in a labyrinth of grief and anxiety. It felt as if a gaping chasm widened between us, thickening with the weight of Lucas's condition and the looming threats entangling our lives. "Do you really think we can trust her?" James suddenly turned to me, despair flashing through the storm in his eyes. What if this was all a setup? What if no? "Listen," I interrupted, trying to infuse my voice with the light of conviction. "Emily has been here this entire time. She knows more than we do, and we need someone we can rely on." He hesitated, the battle raging within him evident. "But what if we're walking right into a trap? What if James?" "I know this is hard," I said, desperately reaching for his hand. "But every moment we waste is a moment Lucas is alone, vulnerable. We cannot let the fear of what if paralyze us. We need to keep moving." For a heartbeat, I thought I glimpsed the resolve sparking behind his fear. Then darkness flickered back into his gaze. "What if it's already too late?" Before I could respond, another buzz from my phone cut through the charged air in the car. My heart fell into my stomach, the unknown message hanging over us like a sword. "It's them," I whispered, opening it with trembling fingers. It read, "You've been warned. Choices come with consequences." James's breath hitched, his face paling further as he read my disbelief. "What does this even mean? Are they watching us? Do they know where we are?" "James, focus," Emily urged again, her tone harsh, but her eyes displayed a flicker of empathy. "We can't let them intimidate us. We have to figure out our next move as soon as we get to that motel." I clutched my phone tightly, wishing I could erase the dread creeping into my chest. The weight of these shadows felt like a suffocating blanket, but the flicker of a plan was sewn into the corners of hope. As we crossed into the next town, I caught the neon glow of the motel flickering ahead, a beacon promising shelter amid chaos. Emily pulled into the cramped parking lot, and we climbed out, the cool night air washing over us like a gentle wave of realism. There was a palpable yet uneasy silence, every creak of the floorboards inside the office stirring up memories of Lucas and what he might be facing without us. We approached the desk, where an elderly man with tired eyes met us. His gaze softened as he looked between us, though I saw the flicker of recognition. "Are you all right?" the man asked gently, recognizing the weight resting on our shoulders. I stuttered a response, but it was James who spoke, his voice lower yet steady. "We need a room for a few nights. Just until we sort some things out." The old man glanced at the door as if considering something. "I can help you. But you should know, sometimes the things people run from have a way of catching up." Empathy radiated from him, and for the first time, I felt a sliver of comfort. "We can keep your presence discreet," he added, as if reassuring us that we weren't alone in this battle. We signed in and took our key, the heavy metal weighing down my pocket, mirroring the sinking dread in my heart. But there was a warmth in how he regarded us, as if he wished to shield us even for a moment. "Room 12. You might want to double-check the locks tonight," he cautioned, casting a glance toward the window where dim streetlights flickered just outside. The gravity of his words settled upon us as we climbed the rickety stairs to our room, mine and James's fingers brushing against the cold metal railing. Once inside, the tension seemed to rise like steam, filling the cramped space and blending with the lingering anxiety. We clustered together, the room small but our fears larger than the walls enclosing us. "What's next?" James asked, looking to Emily and me. "What if this isn't enough?" As he spoke, my phone trembled once more in my pocket, demanding attention. Slowly, dread lacing each breath, I pulled it out, bracing myself for whatever awaited on screen. "Are you really prepared to lose him forever?" It read, a chilling reminder of the stakes laid bare. Just as I finished reading, a knock on the door reverberated against the walls. My heart skipped a beat, panic coursing through my veins as James exchanged glances with Emily. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. The knock came again, firm and unrelenting. Each sound felt like a countdown, every second softened by suspense as we understood our fragile facade of safety was about to be tested. The knock persisted, an echo of our fears reverberating between the thin walls of the motel room. I exchanged glances with James and Emily, our breaths shallow, the air thick with unsaid words and unthought actions. The dread that blanketed us felt almost tangible. "Should we answer?" James whispered hoarsely, his eyes wide as if the act of acknowledging whoever was at the door could somehow seal our fates. "Wait," Emily commanded softly, her brow furrowed in concentration. She moved towards the door soundlessly, her feet barely touching the carpet. The silhouette of her frame appeared composed, but I could see her anxiety rippling beneath the surface. "Who is it?" she muttered, her voice steady yet wavering at the edges, a fragile thread promising strength. "Room service," a man's voice floated through the door, laced with a calming nonchalance. "I have some food for you." "You ordered the burger and fries, right?" I caught my breath, the tension transforming its shape but not dissipating. "We didn't order anything," I called back, each word laced with the instinct of self-protection. "Just a courtesy from the hotel, in case you're hungry." "Special for our guests tonight," he replied, still attempting to sound inviting. "Is it just you?" I pressed, holding my breath, hoping against hope that it was nothing more than a benevolent gesture rather than a cruel twist of fate. "Yes, ma'am. Just me." The informality of his response didn't sit well, a dissonance that scraped against the nerves across my skin. That I looked over at Emily, whose eyes searched mine, questions swirling in their depths. One thing was clear, this was a moment dripping with uncertainty, teetering between trust and suspicion. I felt a fire igniting within me. "We need to know if it's safe," I urged, trying to mask the quiver in my voice. "Then let's look out the peephole," James suggested, moving closer to Emily. Together they approached the door, receiving no more than a sliver of a view from the small circle. "Just a guy in a uniform, but I can't see his face," Emily murmured, stepping back. The tension that hung in the air became almost suffocating, each of us feeling the weight of our next decision pressing down on us like an anvil. "That we might need to play it safe and ignore him," James whispered, fear punctuating his words. Before I could respond, I felt a thrill dance along my spine, an unsettling knot of anxiety coiling tightly within me. Suddenly, the motorcycle engine outside roared to life, sending vibrations through the floorboards, and the night outside became punctuated by another mechanical hum. A moment later, a different knock erupted against our door, louder, more demanding. All of us instinctively recoiled. There was no mistaking this. A night carried urgency and a solidity that felt out of place. A voice called out, deep and distinct, reverberating through the wood. "I know you're in there." The urgency threaded through, alive and electric. "I'm here to help, but you have to trust me. Who are you?" Emily replied, her courage shining bravely through her fear, bolstered by a flickering determination to protect us. "Someone who knows what's really going on. The trap is set, and they're coming for you. You need to let me in." I felt a paradox of emotions, fear mixing with curiosity, weighing in on my decision. James looked blanched, terror etched across his face as he took a step back, shaking his head. "There's no way we can trust him," he hissed, gripping my arm to reinforce his stance. but something stirred within me, a sense of urgency rooted deep in the marrow of my bones commanded my attention. We can't keep hiding forever. If this is our chance, I whispered back, we need to take it. The voice at the door shifted, imploring yet confident. Listen, I promise you. I can help save Lucas. But you must act fast. The mention of Lucas, a fire ignited under my skin. Fierce loyalty to my brother propelled me toward the door, fueled by the undeniable instinct to fight for him, for us. With trembling fingers and a heart racing, I reached for the knob, hesitating for only a split second before turning it slowly. Feeling the gravitational pull of uncertainty and hope coiling around me, the door creaked open, and I stepped back, preparing for whatever lay beyond. As the door swung open fully, a shadow slipped inside. The figure of a tall man dressed in black, wearing a helmet unfastened at the chin and a piercing intensity in his eyes. Let's go, he stated urgently, his voice low but clear. They've got the entire area locked down. We don't have much time. As we grappled with the rapid influx of information, a horrifying realization lurked just beneath the surface. What would happen if we stepped into the world beyond these walls? And was my brother still waiting for us, or had the darkness already engulfed him? In that moment, as fear and hope collided, I knew whatever choice I made next would change everything, and our lives would never be the same again. The shadows of uncertainty loomed in every corner of the small motel room as the man in black stood before us, the urgency in his voice quickening my heartbeat. I could feel the electric tension around us pulsate like a living thing. We can save Lucas, he insisted again, his voice strong yet cloaked in a protective veiling of urgency. The weight of my brother's fate rested heavy on my shoulders, a gravitational pull urging me toward any whisper of hope. Who are you? James croaked, eyeing the intruder with a mixture of fear and skepticism. While I felt the stirrings of hope, James remained locked in place, tethered by distrust and pain. I glanced at Emily, seeking her reassurance as I stepped slightly closer to the stranger. I am someone who knows what's been happening under the surface. You're in danger, all of you, the man explained, his eyes flaring with what appeared to be genuine determination. And Lucas, he's still alive but needs immediate help. If we don't act fast, everything will spiral beyond salvation. Then why should we trust you? James asked, his voice shaking slightly as he moved protectively closer to me. My heart ached for him, the grief of his brother's condition seeing no reprieve, yet my instincts were screaming to act, because I've seen the manipulation running through this entire situation, he replied, his gaze piercing through the doubt that clouded our minds. I know the truth behind what happened to Lucas. I can help you gather the pieces, put an end to the chaos before it closes in on all of you. I felt the burning urgency flashing through the air, a reminder that our moments were dwindling. James. For a fleeting moment, our eyes met, an unspoken dialogue only we could comprehend weaving between us. What choice do we have? I could see the conflict brewing within him, but desperation began to fracture his existing fears. We can't just stand here. If he's right. My voice trailed off, heart racing as the hope of saving Lucas ignited vehemently against the numbness of despair. We have to try. For a long heartbeat, silence swallowed us, the tension hanging thick as James wrestled with the weight of that decision. Finally, he dropped his defenses somewhat, nodding slowly. Okay, he relented, sounding broken but also unwilling to lose any chance we had. The man in black took a step closer, his posture firm yet filled with reassurance. Azrael, he introduced himself. And if your brother is as important to you as I suspect, we need to move him immediately. With that, Azrael led us through the unadorned corridors of the motel, guiding us down the creaky staircase and outside into the wheel of night. The air carried an electric chill, and as we stepped beyond those walls, it felt as though fate itself had woven a thread binding our destinies together, shrouded in uncertainty and the flicker of hope. The motorcycle stood waiting, sleek and ominous in its metallic allure. Anxiety pounded through my veins as I glanced at James, the trust head placed in me straining against the backdrop of his mounting fear. What if they find us? He whispered, concern thick in his voice. What if we're not safe? I held his gaze, willing him to find comfort in my answer. We won't let that happen, James. Together, we'll figure it out. The crushing weight lifted a fraction as our shared vulnerability drew us nearer. I swung onto the bike behind Azrael, my pulse quickening. James joined behind me, our bodies intertwining, uniting trauma, trust, and the whispered wish for a better ending. The engine roared to life, a throaty growl banishing the silence of the night as we sped away. Stars flickered overhead, unfurling across the darkness like forgotten dreams. Each mile we covered felt like a heart-pounding leap toward salvation, though the uncertainty weighed heavily on my heart. Where are we headed? Emily asked, her eyes fixed on Azrael's back as the roads twisted and turned beneath us.to, a safe spot where we can gather intel. There's someone there who can help, Azrael replied, his voice firm, but the urgency crackled beneath the surface. They know the fracture lines running through this entire conspiracy, the shadow that looms over Lucas. With every twist, every turn, the whispers of the unknown wrapped around us like a thick fog, dark threats mingling with the scents of the night air. I squeezed James' hands tighter, willing him to feel the tenacity of hope amidst the tide of heartbreak. Then, suddenly, Azrael swerved sharply into a secluded path, the trees fragrant and looming, whispering their secrets amidst rustling leaves. As we neared a ramshackle cabin that seemed to rise from the earth itself, I felt the shift. This was where it all could change, where the secrets buried might rise to the surface. That we dismounted, my legs shaking slightly from the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Once inside, the dim light revealed disheveled yet vibrant walls lined with papers covered in notes and scattered photographs, a map leading a web of connection we barely understood. The atmosphere crackled with tension as a woman emerged from the shadows, her eyes flickering with recognition. Azrael, she breathed, her voice laced with urgency. We don't have much time. Things are worse than we thought. They're looking for you. Azrael turned to us, urgency sharpening his features. This is Clara. She knows the ins and outs of the organization, everything that led to Lucas' accident. If we're going to save him, we need her help. Then tell me what we need to do, I said, my voice steadying with newfound determination. I refuse to lose him. Whatever it takes. Clara gestured towards the scattered papers around us. We need to piece together Lucas' last movements. He was involved in something dangerous, and it began weeks ago. You have to understand, it's not just a simple accident. There are darker forces at play. Determination coursed through me as I dove into the notes, recognizing names and intersections between lives that mirrored our own. Together, we began to unearth the correlation between Lucas' actions and the people involved. Every turn revealed a puzzle that slowly began to take shape. Desperate chance unfolding before us. Hours ticked by like aching heartbeats. Our findings painted more than a picture, they reflected the depths of loss woven through our lives and the hope glimmering just ahead. Each name adorned in actionable possibilities held a hint of the answers that could save Lucas, and then, amid the fervor of realization, I found it. A sequence, an address, intertwined with the fabric of my brother's fate, illuminated the darkness we faced. This could be where he is, I gasped, the pulse of urgency igniting every inch of me. If we move now, we could intercept them before it's too late. Azrael nodded, a fierce determination now sparkling in his gaze. The fire of potential burned brightly within us, sparking our resolve to act. James stood in the center of the room, uncertainty gripped him, yet I saw the flicker of rebellion gather in his eyes. Let's do this, he affirmed, whether for Lucas, for himself, I didn't know, but at that moment, hope stitched us together. With newfound vigor, we returned to the motorcycle, the night shrouded in ambiguity, yet it was our moment to reclaim the narrative of our lives. Each mile carved away at the uncertainty, and my breath manifested into shared determination as we rolled into the unknown. As we approached the location marked in the frenzy of figures and stinging realization, I turned back to James, a surge of conviction radiating between us. Whatever happens next, we will do this together, I promised. The twilight of hope blossomed deep within me, illuminated only by the daring of defiance that I and the shadows, whispers began to merge with our resolve. The journey had morphed into a path neither of us expected. As we ventured forward, it was evident that Lucas was not merely a barrier between loss and love, he was the compass guiding us through the uncharted waters of grief, and as I held tightly to James, navigating the storm into the night, I knew the truth: we would fight, because in every heart-wrenching moment, we could reshape our destinies, picking up the pieces as we Forged ahead, never looking back, they would come at us like shadows, unrelenting, unyielding, but together, we were a force of light, blazing through the darkness, chasing after a flicker of hope amid a world of uncertainty. And in that truth, we would rise, no longer defined by what we lost, but by who we could still become. Together, we would emerge from the wreckage victorious. In the depths of despair, I found my resolve. Would you dare to reach for the light, too?